Chapter 2, Hillcrest High. Here is your room, Ava. Your roommate has already settled in because of your late admission, but she's a good girl. She can help you out if you need anything. Or you could also call me. Jackson smiled down at me, handing me the keys to my dorm room. Thank you, but I don't think that will be necessary. I smiled back. Suit yourself, he chuckled. But before you go, there are a few things you should keep in mind. I brief the freshmen usually, but since you're new here, you should know. What is it? I raised my eyebrows. I'll be straightforward. This school, the students, a whole lot of them are jerks, especially the jocks. Stay away from them. People here are also class conscious, so avoid telling too many people that you live here. You'll find a lot of bullies. Just ignore them. And most of all, steer clear of the wolves, he said, his tone warning. Wolves? I frowned. Is that the name of a football team or something? No, Jackson said, a smile stretching across his lips. They're a group of students, the most popular ones here. Coming from the richest families of the city, they're pretty untouchable, and every student is frightened of them. And trust me when I say this, being afraid is the smart choice. You cross them, they'll make your life here a living hell. So just don't get involved. You see them bully anyone? Mind your own business. See them walking in your direction? Turn back. Just make yourself invisible, all right? He advised. All right. I frowned. This is starting to sound more like a prison. Stay away from the deadliest criminals and all. I laughed nervously. You could say that. Jackson smirked. Don't take my words lightly. I won't. I nodded. Thanks for the heads up. Anytime, honey. He winked. I'll leave you to it then. He walked away, and as soon as his back was towards me, I rolled my eyes. Anytime, honey. I mimicked him, entering the dorm room. I pulled my suitcase inside and shut the door, looking around. It was a neat space, with cream-colored walls, a decent rug covering half the floor, and 2 single beds joined together as one. One side was already taken, as obvious by the books and magazines laying on it, while the other side was left empty, for me. I walked to it and sat down, noticing the posters on the wall. There was BTS, The Vampire Diaries, Shadowhunters, and Harry Potter. Seems like we'll get along. I heard the water stop running and only then realized that my roommate had been showering. A few moments later, she stepped out of the washroom wearing only a towel around her body. Oh, you're already here, she exclaimed, holding the towel tightly around herself. I'm so sorry for all the mess. She smiled apologetically, walking to her side of the bed and starting to stack the books in one pile. That's okay, I smiled back reassuringly. How long have you been in this school? Me? Long enough, she chuckled, grabbing the clothes that were laid out on the couch. Just give me a minute. She went back into the washroom and I sighed before pursing my lips. She stepped out a moment later, clad in a plain white t-shirt and denim jeans. Her short brown hair was still dripping wet, and I noticed the trail of water she left everywhere as she walked. You're, not gonna dry your hair? I asked, an amused smile on my face. Nah, They get frizzy when I do that. I let them air dry, she replied, glancing at herself in the mirror. I didn't know dorm rooms came with dressing tables, I admitted. They don't. I saved money to buy this one, she replied, applying perfume. Essential for a girl. Couldn't argue with that, I agreed. So how long have you been in? Like I said, long enough to be able to brief you about the dangers of Hillcrest High, she replied, glancing at me through the mirror. Dangers? I bit my lip. You mean the wolves. I see Jackson told you about them already, she sighed. Jerk. Couldn't have done that for us, piece of shit. Okay, I feel like there's a story here. I raised an eyebrow, standing up from the bed. There is one, she nodded. It's more of a horrifying incident, actually. She sighed. What do you mean? I narrowed my eyes slightly. I came to this school with my best friend. We were excited, happy to get admission here. It didn't last long, though. You see, we didn't know who the wolves were, and my friend, she bumped into one of them and spilt her drink on their clothes, she narrated. Okay, and? She gulped, now turning to me as she leaned against the dressing table. They insulted her in front of the entire cafeteria, made a laughingstock out of her, started to bully her every single day. They'd block her way so she'd be late for classes, and she kept receiving detention because of it. So, being naive, she complained to the principal. And guess what? As revenge, they set her hair on fire. What? I whispered in disbelief, my eyes wide. You're joking. I'm not. She gave me a sad smile as tears glistened in her eyes. They didn't even apologize for it. No one asked them anything. The principal did nothing. Instead, once again, she became the topic for gossip. The girl with the blazing hair, they call her. She let out a chuckle. That's unbelievable, I frowned, horrified. I hate this place already. She let out a laugh, shaking her head. For the targets of the wolves, hating this place is a pretty weak word. I'm sorry your friend had to go through that, I said softly. I'm guessing she left? Yeah, she nodded. I didn't get your name, by the way. Ava Clayton. I extended my hand towards her. Tanisha, she smiled, taking my hand in hers. Tanisha Kapoor. That's a beautiful name, I complimented. You're from India? Yep, Delhi. Anyway, if you need any help in unpacking, you can ask. Now, I'm not saying I'll always help, she chuckled, but I might, if I'm in the mood. So don't hesitate to ask. I won't, I replied, grinning at her. What's your schedule? I was hoping you wouldn't mind showing me around the school. Oh, I'd love to, she said, her tone enthusiastic. But I don't think it's a good idea, she said sheepishly. Can I ask why? It's okay if you have to stay with your friends, I said softly. Jan, she smiled, turning back to the mirror. I don't have any friends. After the blazing hair incident, no one would even pass by us. Well, if that's the case, I shrugged, I'd love to be your friend. Hang out with you. I'd like that, she smiled, eyeing me with gratitude. I did not understand why, though. Her smile then changed to an excited one. Let me know when you're ready to go. Just give me a few minutes. And finally, the cafeteria. Tanisha smiled as we made our way to a table. We sat down and I looked around, admiring the enormous room and the scent of pancakes and waffles. Isn't cafeteria food supposed to be disgusting? I asked, sighing in content. Not here, Tanisha chuckled. Food is the best part here. That's exciting, I laughed. I'm a huge foodie. I can tell. We made our way to the counter and grabbed our food, continuing to chat. Tanisha told me about her family back in India and how difficult it was to convince them to let her come here. She had a pretty overprotective family, and, judging from the things she told me, it was truly a shock that they agreed to let her come. As we returned to our table, I noticed how the other students were staring at us. There were obvious whispers going around the cafeteria, and I frowned, wondering what it could be about. Why is everyone talking about us? I asked Tanisha softly. They're not used to seeing people with me, Tanisha replied, her face falling. I get that, but this just seems a tad extreme, I muttered. They're literally looking at us and talking. Who does that? I frowned. Well, 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 a voice spoke loudly, earning everyone's attention. Tanisha and I turned toward the source to find a girl standing behind us. Her Gucci bag and Swarovski jewelry told me she was one of the rich ones, and I frowned, confused. Look who we have here, she smirked, staring at Tanisha. Seems the blazing hair girl finally found a new friend, another said, making her way to our table. She was wearing a hijab over her head, and the way she walked was so graceful it made me insecure. The blazing hair girl? I whispered, staring at Tanisha with wide eyes. I thought that was your friend. I'd like to know who this brave girl is, another girl spoke, walking up to our table and standing beside the one with the hijab. We don't want any trouble, I said, raising my hands in surrender. I'm guessing you're the wolves, I added, saying it more to myself. Yes, new girl. We're the wolves. I see you already know about us. A guy said this time, putting his arm around one of the girls as he walked to us as well. And yet you're still sitting as we speak to you. One more guy spoke up behind us. I frowned. I knew that voice. I turned around to find someone all too familiar walking in our direction. He stood beside the first girl, putting an arm around her waist. What are you waiting for? Get your ass off the chair. Stefan, I whispered, my eyes wide. Tanisha stood up, almost shivering in fear. Tears were glistening in her eyes, and I frowned, standing up as well. Stefan had his gaze fixed on me, yet he looked through me as if I was a complete stranger. Did he actually not remember me, or was he just pretending? I couldn't tell. Ace, the girl with the hijab smirked. The newbie seems to find you really interesting. Look how she's ogling you. It's not her fault, Ace spoke, giving me a small smile. I'm just that attractive. I felt disappointment envelop my heart for some reason. He was a jerk when he was sober. An arrogant, smug jerk. Yes, but you're also my boyfriend, the girl beside him spoke through gritted teeth. I shifted my gaze to the floor, not wanting to offend any of them. Look, we don't want any trouble. I'm new here and she's my friend. Please, just leave us alone, I said softly. That's the thing, newbie, the other guy spoke, walking up to me. He grabbed my arm and turned me to face him, making me gasp. Her friends? He gestured to Tanisha. They automatically become our enemies, especially ones who dare to talk in front of us. Let go of my arm, I said through a clenched jaw. Or what? The third girl said, raising an eyebrow. Guys, please, let her go. She won't hang out with me anymore. Tanisha finally spoke up, a tear escaping her eye. Priya, please, it's not her fault, she begged, looking at the third girl. I frowned, gaping at her. She was giving them power over herself. I will, I announced, yanking my arm from the guy's grip as I stepped away from him. I will hang out with anyone I want to. You guys cannot dictate who befriends who, I stated. A laugh echoed through the cafeteria, and I turned around to find it was Ace. He crossed his arms over his chest and walked up to me, making me back away into the table. What's your name, newbie? He asked, leaning in close to me, making me lean back. He was trying to intimidate me with his huge form, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't working. Ava, I replied. Ava, he smirked, a glint of mischief in his eye. Since you like making friends so much. He leaned in closer, casually placing one of his hands on the table beside me. Why don't you make friends with me too? He raised his eyebrows, extending his free hand towards me. I flinched away slightly, but the table did not allow me to move too far. I don't make friends with bullies, I muttered, regretting the words as soon as they escaped my lips. Ace smirked, turning his head to glance at his girlfriend. I took the opportunity to try and get away from him, but he slammed his other on the table as well, caging me between his arms. He faced me again, the smirk absent from his face, now replaced with a hard look. Be careful with your words, Ava. They can be damaging to you. Chapter 3. Taking a Stand. Be careful with your words, Ava. They can be damaging to you, he warned, his jaw clenched. Get away from me, I stated, even as my heartbeat started to pace. He was standing too close to me, taking me back to the night we had first met. We had almost kissed that night, but at that moment, all I wanted to do was punch him across the face. Or what? He raised his eyebrows. What will you do? I took in a sharp breath, glaring at him. Placing my hands on his chest, I pushed him away, slipping away from the table. Grabbing Tanisha's hand, I attempted to leave the cafeteria, but the girls were quick to block my way. Where do you think you're going, Miss Ava? The other guy in their group asked, walking up to me. He stood right behind me, making me move away from him, as their group formed a circle around us. She's running, Darren, Priya mocked, chuckling. Is it just me, or does she look like a pigeon? Ace's girlfriend asked, looking me up and down. Not quite, Ace said, walking closer to us. I backed away from him, gulping. To me, he gave me a once-over. She's more like a duck. My eyes widened at his words, and I looked him in the eye. But there was no recognition in them. Was him calling me that a coincidence? I was not sure. The ugly duckling, Darren laughed, clapping. I bit my tongue, shifting my gaze to the floor. Isn't it funny, everyone? Darren asked, looking around at the other students. Don't you guys find it funny? He yelled, and the cafeteria broke into a series of nervous laughs. That's right, the ugly duckling. And you guys want to hear what sound a duck makes? Ace asked, stepping even closer to me. Guys, please let her go, Tanisha cried, tears rolling down her cheeks. Shut up, the girl wearing the hijab yelled, walking up to her. Aisha, please. You guys entertain yourself with me. She didn't know she was taking up rivalry with you when we became friends. It's my fault, she begged, her voice shaking. Oh, look at you, Aisha smiled. You're actually standing up for someone. What an amazing friend you are. But we don't like it, fire hair, Darren said, walking up to her. He placed his hands on her shoulders, making her stiffen. We liked you more when you remained silent. Now go, run off, he ordered. Please, she begged, wiping away her tears. Sapphire. She shifted her gaze to Ace's girlfriend. Let Ava be. I'm gonna count till 3, Tanisha, Priya stated, returning from the counter with a piece of cake. She stood beside me while Darren quickly walked up to me with a smirk. He grabbed my wrist so I would not run away. If you don't leave right now, this delicious cake will be her makeup. My eyes widened, and I struggled to get my wrist free from Darren's hold, but he was too strong. Let me go, I yelled, trying to push him away, but in vain. 1, Sapphire said, smirking. 2, Ace announced, an amused smile on his face. Stop! I'm going! Tanisha shouted, raising her hands in surrender. She wiped away her tears and rushed out of the cafeteria, leaving me alone with the wolves. She saved you, Aisha smiled at me. Or not, Priya shrugged, smearing the cake onto my face. The cafeteria walls echoed with the students' laughter, who were now genuinely starting to enjoy the show. Tears pricked my vision as I stood there completely still, unable to believe that actually happened to me. Ace walked up to me and offered me a tissue. Your face became dirty, he said softly, looking almost sympathetic. How will I see your tears when you cry? I sniffed, but refused to allow the tears to fall. My jaw was clenched, and my fists were balled, my heart knocking against my ribs. I gulped down the lump forming in my throat, refusing to show weakness. That's so sweet of you, Ace, but she's rejecting your kindness. Sapphire frowned. The entire group closed in on me, now standing in a smaller circle. She needs to pay for that, Priya declared. Take the tissue, Ava, Ace said, leaning down to my eye level. As much as I wanted to back away, I knew there would be no use, so I stood my ground. "Take it," Darren said, placing his hand on my shoulder. "It's for your own good," he whispered, before letting out a loud, evil chuckle. "Okay, let's give her an option," Ace said. "She either takes the tissue, or Aisha will dump ice cubes in your shirt. How does that sound? Then we'll see how a duck flaps her wings." "No," I whispered, looking up at him in horror. "Yes," Priya smirked, grabbing my arm. Sapphire grabbed my other arm while Darren pulled out his phone to record the scene. Aisha returned with a tray of ice cubes, smirking as she stood behind me. "Let me go!" I yelled, glaring at Ace as a tear finally left my eye. "She's crying," Sapphire pouted. "Aw, that's so sad." I noticed Ace's expressions softened slightly, but he remained silent. "I'll take the tissue," I cried, trying to get my arms free from their hold. Ace brought it closer to me, but Darren took it from him. "Not so easily, Ace," he smirked, holding it up above my reach. The girls were still holding onto my arms, making it impossible for me to take it. "You missed the deadline," Aisha said in my ear, before pulling the back of my shirt and emptying the ice into it. I almost jumped, and they let go of my arms, laughing out loud. I wriggled, shaking my shirt, making all the ice cubes fall to the ground one by one. Tears rolled down my cheeks as the last one fell, and a sob escaped my lips. In an attempt to walk away from them, my foot slipped over an ice cube and I fell backwards, a scream escaping my lips. I closed my eyes, ready to feel my back crash against the floor, but an arm wrapped around me, saving me. I opened my teary eyes to look up at Ace, a blank expression on his face. Grabbing his shirt, I steadied myself as hot tears rolled down my cheeks. I felt my blood boil at the sight of him, and my mind went back to the night I helped him. How could he do that to me after what I had done for him? "What are you staring at?" He raised an eyebrow. "Don't fantasize about me in broad daylight, Ducky." And that was the last straw. The sounds of laughter seemed to fade around me as I felt my fist clench. Everyone seemed to disappear, and all I could see was his smug face, staring down at me like I was nothing. And before I knew it, my fist connected with his jaw, whipping his face to the side. The cafeteria broke out into a series of gasps as Ace slowly shifted his gaze back to me. His eyes were wide. In shock or anger, I wasn't sure. Blood oozed out of his lip, and he touched it, staring at his finger with pure rage in his eyes. The shock seemed to have abated by now, and Priya stepped forward and grabbed my arm. "You bloody newbie!" she yelled, glaring at me. "How dare you?" "Let go of me!" I yelled back, yanking my arm out of her grip. I pointed a finger at Ace. "I am not afraid of you, Mr. Ace, whoever the hell you are. Just because these people shiver at the sight of you and follow you around like puppies, swooning over your physical appearance, it doesn't mean everyone will do the same. Because I, for one, have never seen someone as ugly as you. As all 5 of you!" His jaw was clenched as he stared at me silently, shivering with anger. He took a step towards me, and as much as I wanted to back away, I held my ground. This, what you just did, you're going to regret it. More than you have ever regretted anything. His voice was dangerously low, and I felt a shiver go down my spine, but I refused to show weakness. No matter what happens or what you do to me, I will never, ever regret this punch, I stated, looking him in the eye defiantly. You little bitch! Sapphire yelled, grabbing my arm and turning me to her. She raised her hand to slap me, and I flinched. But before she could hit me, Ace caught hold of her wrist. Let me go, Ace! She needs to be put in her place! She snapped, glaring at me. She's right, Ace, Darren said, his jaw clenched. Let her go, Ace replied through gritted teeth. No one will do anything now. He stormed out of the cafeteria, and I gulped, feeling slightly relieved. You have no idea what you've done, Aisha said to me before going after him along with Sapphire. You're finished, ugly duckling, Darren announced, also following after them. He dragged Priya out too, who looked reluctant to go, her angry gaze stuck on me. I blinked, feeling my throat burn as the other students all stared at me. Whispers went around the cafeteria, and I ran towards the door, wanting to leave. But a few students blocked my way. You guys want it too? I practically growled, wanting to leave before the tears would leave my eyes. Girl, you have no idea who you just punched, one of the girls said, looking almost frightened. Pack your bags, baby, the guy with them said. You'll receive your expulsion in less than an hour. Expulsion? I said in disbelief. I'll tell the principal what he did to me. He deserved it. The guy chuckled, shaking his head. Babe, he said, you think Princey will care? You punched the son of the freaking mayor. You think he'll care what you did? You're done here. My eyes widened and I gaped at him. Son of the mayor? I whispered, blinking. Why else do you think no one says anything to them? The girl raised her eyebrows. They're all from extremely influential families. Ace is the son of the mayor, I mumbled, still unable to believe it. The danger alarms in my brain had now started to go off, as I realized it was probably my last day at Hillcrest High. My future was ruined. My perfect record destroyed. Yeah, his girlfriend Sapphire, she's the daughter of Abraham Hunt, the girl replied. Abraham Hunt? My eyes widened. Yes, the designer. Aisha is the daughter of an Arab prince, Akbar Abdullah. She's practically a princess. I gulped, biting my lip. What about Darren and, Priya? They're not as rich as the other three, but still pretty wealthy. Darren has a car showroom, and Priya's father is a scientist, Abhishek Dhawan. Heard of him? The guy smirked. I'm screwed, aren't I? I whispered, shifting my gaze to the floor. Ava Clayton? A guy asked, entering the cafeteria. He looked around before his gaze set on me, and a knowing look took over his features when he saw my state. You're called in the principal's office. Chapter 4. Second Chance. "Violence is strictly prohibited in this school, Miss Clayton. It's your first day here and you went off and punched a student? What were you even thinking?" the principal reprimanded, slamming his hands on the desk as he glared at me through his thin glasses. "Forgive me, Mr. Wharton, but I had no choice. I am an extremely calm person, but he provoked me. Ace and his friends were bullying me," I replied. "Nonsense," he said, staring at me like I was crazy. "I have never received any such complaint about him before." "It's clear why. Who would dare to complain about the mayor's son? It's not like the school would take any action," I said, crossing my arms over my chest. "Miss Clayton," he scowled, "are you blaming the school for supporting bullies? How dare you?" I sighed, shifting my gaze to the floor. "That's not what I meant," I said softly, frowning. "I hope not," he replied. He took a deep breath as he started to sift through some papers. He retrieved an envelope from them and handed it to me. "Here's your letter. You can submit your dorm room keys to Jackson." My eyes widened. You're really expelling me?" I said, gaping at him. "You don't expect me to ignore your arrogance, do you? Besides, unlike what you think, we do take strict actions against bullying. This is your punishment for laying hands on a student," Mr. Wharton said, the previous anger on his face and voice now replaced with nonchalance. "You can't do this," I muttered. "I'm on a scholarship here. I'm a good student with a clean record. He bullied me first. You can check with my previous schools, with my teachers. I have never been a violent person. I'm sorry, Miss Clayton, but sometimes loss does that to you. We understand that you lost your parents in a tragic accident, but that does not mean you will project your anger and frustration onto other students," he said, placing the envelope on his desk. I blinked, biting my tongue as tears pricked my vision. I stared at the expulsion letter and sniffed, stepping forward and picking it up. "This isn't fair," I whispered and turned around to leave when there was a knock on the office door. "Come in," Mr. Wharton said, and the door opened to reveal Ace. He entered the office and stood right in front of me, looking down at me. His hands were stuffed in his pockets and he had a laid-back posture. He knew what had happened. I could see the amusement in his eyes. "Mr. Argent," the principal smiled at him. "What can I do for you?" The ghost of a smile appeared on Ace's face, and I shifted my gaze to the floor. Walking around him, I deliberately bumped my shoulder into his, wanting to hit him again before I'd leave. "I want you to cancel her expulsion," Ace announced, making me freeze in my tracks. My eyebrows shot up in surprise, and I waited for him to continue, not turning to look at him. "You want me to do what?" Mr. Wharton questioned, bewildered. "Cancel her expulsion," Ace repeated. I turned around to face him now, frowning. He was already staring at me, and I looked away, not wanting to maintain eye contact. "Okay," Mr. Wharton replied. "If you forgive her, I can do that." "Oh, I will forgive her," Ace smiled, but it did not reach his eyes as he continued to look at me. "As long as she apologizes to me in front of the entire cafeteria." "I'm not doing that," I stated, now meeting his eye. "You bullied me first. If you apologize too, I will do it as well." Ace let out a chuckle, stepping closer to me. "You know you'll be kicked out of here if you don't agree to my condition," he said softly. "I'm giving you a chance to fix what you did and stay in this school, and I'm only doing this because of what you did for me that night." My mouth parted slightly, my previous determined demeanor crumbling. "You remember?" I said softly. "As a matter of fact, I do. So just apologize to me and all of this can be over. You can continue studying here on your scholarship, live in the dorms, save your future. Doesn't sound so bad, does it? All in the exchange of one apology," he whispered. He stepped even closer to me, and I had to tilt my head back to look at him. "You see, I have a reputation, Ava, and your little stunt is raising questions. I will do anything to save it. So it's either an apology or expulsion. You have 20 seconds to decide." He stepped back again, crossing his arms over his chest. I frowned, weighing my options. What would I do if I got kicked out? I had no idea. I came to Hillcrest for this very school, to escape my home back in 𝘓𝘓. I could not live there anymore, not with the memories of my parents, when they were not there with me now. And I did not have the kind of money I would need to afford another school. They wouldn't possibly give me a scholarship after being expelled from one place. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Okay, I exclaimed, cutting him off. "I'll apologize." "Great," Ace smirked, excitement and mischief dancing in his eyes. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine when I saw his expression, and suddenly, I was not so sure of my decision anymore. He took the envelope and retrieved the letter from it, tearing it into pieces. Ace took my hand and placed the torn letter in it before leaning into my ear. "Best of luck, Ava Clayton," he whispered, making me gulp. Without another word, he left the office, leaving me staring down at the pieces of paper in my hand, wondering if expulsion would have been the easy way out. Because, from what I judged by his tone and demeanor, I was screwed. I took in a deep breath before entering the cafeteria again. All eyes turned to me as if they were all waiting for me to return. It was easy to spot the wolves table, right in the middle of the room, where everyone's attention would be. I saw Ace sitting with his friends, laughing about something, while Sapphire sat in his lap, playing with his hair. "Here goes nothing," I whispered, before slowly making my way to them. Whispers and shocked gasps erupted throughout the cafeteria as students wondered what I would do next, or how I was even still here. Ace's gaze shifted to me, and the genuine smile on his face changed into a smirk. He tapped Sapphire on the back, and she glanced at me, standing up from his lap only to sit beside him. Ace sat with one leg over the other, resting his elbow on his knee and his chin on the knuckles of his closed fist. "The ugly duckling returns," Darren announced loudly, clapping to make sure we had everyone's attention. Priya, Aisha, and Sapphire laughed at his comment, but Ace did not. He kept staring at me in anticipation, waiting for me to give him what he wanted. "You have a problem?" Sapphire asked, raising an eyebrow at me. "If you're here to say something, say it, or get out of our faces." I gulped, taking a deep breath again to prepare myself. "I'm sorry for punching you, Ace," I said softly.
What was that?
He feigned ignorance, drawing his chair slightly closer to me.
I didn't hear you properly.
I took in a deep breath, trying to keep myself calm. I said, "I'm sorry for punching you," I repeated. He stood up, walking closer to me, and I took a step back.
Still didn't catch it.
He smiled. I bit my tongue, now glaring at him. I said, "I'm sorry for punching."
Louder,
Ace said, cutting me off as he shoved his hands inside his pockets. He bent down slightly to reach my eye level.
Couldn't hear you from up there.
I felt my fist clench again, and all I wanted to do was punch him again. But I knew how that would end up, so I gritted my teeth instead. I said, "I'm sorry for—"
Louder, ducky, as loud as your punch was,
Darren announced. "I'm sorry." "Louder!" Aisha interrupted me this time. "I'm sorry for punching you!" I yelled at the top of my voice, making the wolves smile in satisfaction. "I should have kicked you in the gut as well, because you deserved it," I added, my tone slightly lower now, but loud enough for the whole cafeteria to hear me. Their smiles faltered, replaced with scowls and glares in a second. Ace narrowed his eyes slightly, his expression hard. "You guys think you can buy everyone with your false status and greatness? Guess what? You can't! Because you people belong in the dumps for tormenting those who have lesser money than you do. And you, Mr. Ace Argent." I pointed a finger at him. "Just because your father practically owns this city does not mean you own the people. You bullied me, so you got what you deserved, and given the chance, I'd punch you again." I let my hand drop to the side as my chest heaved up and down while I caught my breath. Before anyone had the chance to say anything to me, I turned around and walked towards the door, ready to go get away from all the attention. I could hear what was happening behind me as Sapphire, Darren, and Priya tried to follow me, but Ace stopped them all. Sighing in relief, I quickly exited the cafeteria, my pace increasing. I went to the girls' washroom and placed my small bag on the sink, taking a deep breath. "Shit," I muttered to myself, biting my lip. "This won't be good." I gulped, running a hand through my hair. I closed my eyes and massaged my temples. I had known Ace Argent for less than 2 hours, and he had already given me a headache. "Pain in the ass," I mumbled through gritted teeth.
"I'd give you that, duckling, but I'm not so sure I'd enjoy it."
I heard someone speak, and my eyes shot open, widened to the size of saucers. I glanced at him through the mirror to find him standing right behind me, and I immediately turned around, backing into the sink. "What are you—" "Shh." He cut me off sharply, placing his index finger on his lips as he closed the space between us.
"You were thinking about me, so I showed up," he said, giving me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I gulped, looking around, but before I could even think of escaping, he bent down and placed his hands on the sink on either side of me. I felt my heart rage within my chest, and I leaned back as much as I could, staring at him with wide eyes. "What are you doing here? This is the girls' washroom. You can't come in here," I said, my previous courage not completely absent. Ace chuckled darkly at my words, leaning in even closer to me as he looked me in the eye. "You really thought you could say all that
And hide from me?
He asked, his breath fanning against my skin.
No, baby girl.
He shook his head, trying to tuck a strand of my hair behind my ear, but I turned my face away.
It doesn't work like that.